And welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your day. We absolutely appreciate you. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. You know, each day we are honored. We are really honored to stand behind this desk to take you on a journey across Black America, the Black America that we know. And there are a lot of places that you can go for news that too narrowly focuses on our blues. But right here at FOXSOUL's Black Report, we aim to share stories that reflect our rhythm and blues with informed perspective and analysis. So now on to Missouri, where Timothy M. Hazlitt was arrested earlier this month after the 22-year-old woman escaped from his home after being sexually assaulted, according to our ABC affiliate KMBC9. The 39-year-old Hazlitt, seen here on the screen, was charged by the Clay County Prosecutor's Office with first-degree rape or attempted rape, first-degree kidnapping, and second-degree assault, but has pled not guilty. Last month, the nonprofit media startup, the Kansas City Defender, posted a video on TikTok and Twitter to allege that a serial killer had been targeting young Black girls in the area after they reported a number of girls had gone missing. Now, according to the Kansas City Star, a spokesperson from the Kansas City Police Department issued a statement that there was, quote, no basis to support this rumor, end quote, and that the reports were completely unfounded after the video went viral on social media. Now, Hazlitt is currently being held on a $500,000 bond in a Clay County jail, but perhaps now Kansas City Police Department will be a little bit more attentive to crime tips from TikTok and Twitter users in the future, don't you think?
I think so. And on to the campaign trail, the star power of Oprah Winfrey was just added to the growing enthusiasm for Stacey Abrams as she fights to win over voters in her second run for Georgia governor. Winfrey appeared in a pre-recorded chat with Abrams, saying she believes the Georgia Democrat candidate has a, quote, calling to want people to be able to do better, to live better, and to thrive in their lives. Now, during the chat, Abrams also explained why she wears the color purple on the campaign trail, saying being a leader means supporting the entire state, and purple represents both the color of energy and a mixing of red and blue, those colors, of course, used by Democrats and Republicans. Abrams went on to say, quote, we are best when we are melding together the greatest ideas of everyone.
And speaking of great ideas, this probably wasn't a great idea, but he did it anyway. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is drawing criticism with his decision to issue a stay to a federal appeals court order that South Carolina U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham comply with a subpoena to testify before a grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia. Now, the district attorney there is conducting a criminal investigation into the parties involved in trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, more affectionately known as Auntie Maxine, did not mince words about Justice Thomas, only the second Black person to ever serve on the high court. She said, quote, Clarence Thomas has abused his power to freeze the subpoena for Lindsey Graham. These Trump sycophants are doing everything they can to protect each other. In the end, they all need to go to prison. And if we allow them to go without punishment, they will destroy our democracy, end quote. Now, you might remember the wife of Justice Thomas, Virginia Ginny Thomas, reportedly attended the January 6, 2021 rally and texted Trump's White House chief of staff at least 29 times, pressing him to overthrow the will of U.S. voters in a brazen attempt to keep Trump in power. Now, speaking of power, on to the power on the baseball field. We certainly haven't seen enough of us on the field since the days of Jackie Robinson, since he broke the Major League Baseball color barrier. But there's projected to be no U.S.-born Black players in this World Series. Again, I repeat, there are projected to be no U.S. born Black players participating in this year's World Series. That's according to the Associated Press. Now, Robinson debuted in 1947 with the Brooklyn Dodgers and played in the World Series that year. Since then, the 1950 matchup between the New York Yankees and Phillies has been the only World Series without a black player. Now, the World Series starts tomorrow night between the Houston Astros and the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. They're playing in Houston to kick off that World Series. And it's just so interesting that this conversation has come back up because it's been a conversation for a very long time now. One of my middle brothers is 40. And when he was a youngster, my father really pushed him towards baseball. But the enthusiasm and the focus was really basketball and football. And we really, I think as a black community, sometimes disregard, or we really don't understand, how important our history has been in baseball. And we really just celebrate and rally around basketball and football. Let me tell you something, there's long money in baseball. And I think as a result, we have really lost our presence in the game. Lots of times you've got folks from Latin America, even places like Japan, Cuba, very heavy presence in the Major Baseball League. And I'm hoping that stories like this, us talking about it, will push parents and even the youngsters to want to rediscover baseball and that rich history, and that you can be just as successful playing baseball as you would or could basketball and football and some other sports. Yeah,
and also hopefully it pushes the Major League Baseball folks to do a better job recruiting talent, right? I mean, this is an indicator of progress. I think this is part of the reason why it's such a big story is, Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, and here we are so many decades later, and it almost feels a little bit like we are back at square one. And so
there's plenty of color, just not African American color, if you will. And so I think that's really the emphasis here. You said Black American-born players, and I don't really know what the fix is, except for just introducing this sport as widely and again as enthusiastically as we do. Football and basketball.
And there are different schools of thought on this, because there's a Pan-African view that says, okay, well, so what if they're not U.S. born? If they're black, they belong to the diaspora. And then there are those folks that say, you know what? No, it's important that we have, U.S. born black players. And so different schools of thought on this, but plenty of room for us to grow.
Yes, indeed. All right, a former Middle Tennessee State University student is accusing a fraternity of racist hazing as he attempted to become a member. Now, the plaintiff is suing the university for incidents that began in October of last year within the Kappa Iota chapter of the Kappa Sigma fraternity. The lawsuit names 10 fraternity members, who are all white, allegedly targeted him and another black pledgee with racial hazing. They are said to have been the only 2 black pledges in that particular class.
Now, over to upstate New York, where approximately 100 Guilderland High School students recently staged a walkout in response to an alleged blackface incident that previously happened at its football game. I can hardly believe this. The high school promoted a quote-unquote blackout game, encouraging students and fans to dress in black clothing, which prompted some students to show up to the game with their faces painted in black. Now, according to the district, building administrators immediately asked the students to leave the bleacher area, directing them to the restrooms and asked them to wash their faces. Now, the district said it plans to create a climate of respect in the coming weeks by meeting with students through roundtable discussions to gather firsthand perspectives. I don't know, firsthand perspectives. I mean, you got high school students, in upstate New York thinking it's okay to show up to football games in black faces, and yet and still people wonder, well, why is it so important to teach black history in schools? Why is it so important that we do everything we can to keep black authors' books from being banned in schools? Maybe if we spend a little bit more energy pushing back against that erasure of our history, maybe if we spend a little bit more time, really engaging youth in conversations about the truth of our history, then maybe we wouldn't see incidents like this that don't do anything to create safe spaces. They don't do anything to protect black folks, from white supremacy ideology that oftentimes turns into white supremacy violence.
Yeah, and these are just the stories that we're hearing about. We learned about the cotton incident, and that turned out to be, fun and games where they were, putting cotton on, I think it was a young black boy's head. That's the one that got a lot of the attention. But the school came back and said it was a group of, mixed race kids. And also just recently the slave auction in your home state.
In Sacramento.
Yeah, so I think all of these incidences, if you will, speak to the need for sensitivity training, for our history to be included in the academic lineup, because when you have no reference point, when you don't understand that blackface and the slave auction and acts like this are very cruel and insensitive, then I think we're going to continue to unfortunately be reporting on stories like this. And I just need everybody to, if we're going to be sensitive, let's be sensitive to everything and everybody. You say something about a particular culture, your whole life is shut down. But there's been a lot of racial rhetoric surrounding black folks, and it just seems like people are able to walk away from it or recover from it. It's just unnerving, if you will.
And one of the things I really like about what you said, Courtney, is this isn't about cancel culture. Oftentimes, we get hit with the criticism, there you go, trying to cancel somebody's ability to make their voice heard. There's a difference between free speech and hate speech.
That's right.
And I think, a number of the stories that we report on right here on Fox Soul's Black Report is really in the spirit of accountability, and not in the spirit of canceling folks. And we believe that our soulmates, that our audience, is wise enough to understand the difference. We certainly attempt to make clear that difference each and every day.
I agree. Yeah. All right, moving on here. The decline in black home ownership since the COVID-19 pandemic is turning the housing market upside down, as you can imagine. Now, the Pennsylvania Capital Star reports that the black ownership rate was 49.7% in 2004, but fell to 40.6% in 2019. Redlining, the Great Recession, gentrification, and housing trends during the pandemic have all added to the growing disparity between black and white ownership, home ownership, that is. The difference today is larger than it was in the early 1960s, when that Fair Housing Act and other civil rights legislation were in effect and were prompted by these issues.
And not too long ago, I had a chance to interview Secretary Marcia Fudge, the Secretary of U.S. Housing and Urban Development, on my radio show, and she outlined a number of programs and initiatives that she was leading that I thought, wow, that's really outside of the box. It's really innovative thinking. And part of what her motivation was grounded in the fact that black home ownership, is an essential building block towards building black wealth. And so that's part of the reason why the story, the figures in the story are so astonishing, right? The fact that the goalpost has moved back to almost square one.
Well, the target keeps moving.
Yeah.
And there's this huge trickle down, effect. I was just reading a study or saw a study it really wasn't a study. It was a black couple who was trying to put their house up for sale, and they knew they were being mistreated, substituted their friends who were a white couple, and the conversation was totally different as far as the rates and the value of the home. So clearly there are just blatant acts of racism happening. And it could be as simple as, when you talk about the redlining, here in Detroit, where our headquarters is for Fox Soul's Black Report, I'm a native, the car insurance rates just inside of the city are unbelievable, and it can even trickle out into something as simple as we had an affair at the house, and we didn't want people tracking through the house, so we wanted to rent some really bougie porta potties, and the company was very hesitant because of our zip code, and our neighborhood is still very much intact. Hardworking folks, educators, first responders, homeowners for years. We've been there for 50 years, and so. It really just goes beyond the housing, and it really is this, in my opinion, very racist way of blindsiding us and keeping us on the defensive and trying to just live a life and have a good life.
So you mentioned that story that really went viral and of the black couple that essentially had to strip their house of any artifacts or any pictures that indicated that they were a black couple. But there was also a study by the Brookings Institute by Andre Perry that essentially found that you could take a house on one side of the tracks compared to a house in a predominantly white neighborhood. Same house. Yeah. Same number of bathrooms, same number of floors, right? And, in places like, Washington, D.C., where I have a home still, you saw a significant difference in the worth of these homes.
Absolutely.
The housing value just did not hold. And so it's not just about, dialing up DoorDash or Uber Eats and discovering that, a takeout spot doesn't deliver to your neighborhood.
They can't find a driver.
Right. They can't find a driver, but but it's deeper than that. And so we really have to keep our eye on this and go deeper, because this is an essential building block towards building black wealth.